Okay, good morning everybody. Shavua Tov. We are now on Daf Mem Daled Amud Aleph, masechet Shabbat, 44a. A few lines in, at the beginning of the Mishnah. Metaltelin ner chadash avelo yashan. So you have like a candelabra made out of earthenware, cheres. So the Mishnah begins and says, you're allowed to move a ner of cheres that is brand new. You never used it yet. Now, these candelabras, they were used to place things inside of them as well. When? Says the Mishnah, when they're brand new. So, there was a receptacle inside, of course. So people used it. And therefore, it's not muktzeh. Avelo yashan. But if it's old, meaning, old means one time. You used it already once. Now it has oil inside. So now, it's kind of, it's dirty. So since people don't use it normally, because it's mi'us means it's a bit repulsive to the person. To put things inside something that has oil is not, people are not comfortable doing that. It's mi'us for them. Therefore, it's muktzeh machmat mi'us. Therefore, it is now prohibited under the laws of muktzeh. It's set aside from him because of mi'us. And therefore, you cannot move that on Shabbat. Rabbi Shimon Omer, kol hanerot metatlin. You can move any ner, even an old ner. Why? Because it's something that has usage. You can take something and put it inside. Oh, you don't like it. You don't like doing that. You're not comfortable so much because there's some oil inside. So now the item became a bit mi'us. Reb Shimon doesn't agree with muktzeh machmat mi'us. He doesn't agree with that whole muktzeh. As we know, Reb Shimon is the opinion that there's not so many muktzahs at all. Well, this is one of them that he disagrees with. Kol hanerot metatlin. Therefore, you can move all of the candelabras, all the lamps that are made out of earthenware. Chutz min haner hadolek b'Shabbat. Besides the ner that is because it is lit itself. Why? Why is that a problem? So, Rashi here says the reason why is because we're worried that he might put out the ner. Okay? Now, at the end of the Gemara is not going to say that. So it's not so clear why Rashi went for this pshat. This is the beginning of the Gemara. The Gemara at the beginning is going to believe that the reason for Reb Shimon is because if you move it while it is lit, it may be extinguished. You might come to put it out. Okay. So again, let's just go over the Mishnah very quickly again. The Tana Kama, which we'll see is Rabbi Yehuda, he is of the opinion that you're allowed to move a brand new ner because it has function for permitted function, like placing items inside of it. But once it was used, and it's a bit mi'us, repulsive, for him to use it for things, so now the entire item becomes muktzeh because of its mi'isusa. According to Reb Shimon, there's no strict muktzeh, and therefore, you can always move it, even after it was used, as long as you don't move it when it is lit itself. Okay? Tanu Rabbanan. The Rabbanan taught in a Braita, Metaltlin ner chadash avelo yashan. One may move a brand new lamp, but not an old one. That's like the beginning of our Mishnah. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Meir Omer, kol hanerot metaltlin chutz min haner she'yadlika bo b'Shabbat. Rabbi Meir says you can move all the nerot besides the one that was already lit on Shabbat. He doesn't say that it is lit. If it was lit. Why? Because Rabbi Meir says, I agree with Rabbi Shimon, that what? That there's no such a thing as muktzeh machmat mius. And therefore, all lamps may be moved on Shabbat, even the ones that are old, that were already used and have oil inside of them. That's not a muktzeh for me. But as long as this candelabra, this lamp, was not lit at the onset of Shabbat, because as we learned yesterday, he is in agreement with Rabbi Yehuda that there's a concept called migud itkatzoi leben hashmashot itkatzai lekula yoma. Since because it is iskatzoi muktzeh at the beginning of Shabbat, since it was lit at the beginning of Shabbat, so now it's muktzeh for the whole Shabbat. Okay. Okay. Third opinion is Rabbi Shimon Omer chutz min haner hadolek b'Shabbat. Rabbi Shimon says, besides the ner that's actually lit on Shabbat, like exactly what he said in Aram Mishnah. And so far, the understanding of the Gemara is because he may put it out. Kavta, but once it went out, mutar l'taltala. Then you're allowed to move it. Okay? Even though it was lit at the onset of Shabbat, Rabbi Shimon doesn't hold of that concept. Okay? The Rabbi Aval Kos u'ke'ara ve'ashashit, but a cup or a plate which have oil inside and you lit a wick inside. Ve'ashashit. Ashashit is like a large candelabra made out of glass. They filled all these three things with oil and lit them. Lo yizizem mimkomam. Those you cannot move from their place even after they went out. The Gemara is going to speak about why not, according to Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Elazar actually, Rabbi Shimon Omer, his son Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon says, Mistapek min haner hakaveh. Once a flame is starting to go out, then you're allowed to enjoy the shemen that is dripping out, even at the time that the ner is lit. Now we know that if you take oil out of a ner, that's mechabed, that's extinguishing, right? Because now it's going to go out. But Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon is teaching us a new thing. Once a ner is already on the way out, starting to die out itself, removing oil from it doesn't make any difference. That's what he teaches us. And therefore, you're allowed to enjoy the oil even while it is lit. Okay? So we'll speak about Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon soon. Omer Abaye Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon Savah Kavu Bechadu Palag Aleh Bechadu. Abaye says, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon agrees with his father in one point and disagrees with him in another. He agrees with his father that he doesn't hold of muktzeh. What does it mean? Muktzeh of mi'us and general muktzehs. Only very few limited muktzehs exist. And that's why he allows a person to what? To move it on Shabbat, as long as it's not lit. Upalig aleh bechada, the ilu avu asavar kava en lo kava lo. He argues with his father. His father, Rabbi Shimon, holds that if it went out is when you're allowed to enjoy the oil. But if it's not yet extinguished, lo. Ew. But he holds so far to say savar afal gav to lo kava. Even if it did not go out, you're allowed to enjoy it. Okay? Now, the oil that drips out is also asur while it is lit, because that oil, according to Rabbi Shimon, is huktzeh lemitzvato. It's designated for its mitzvah. So at that time, it is going to be asur. Okay, now the Gemara goes into that little unexplained phrase in Rabbi Shimon's words. Rabbi Shimon said that you're allowed to move all the nerot chutz min haner hadolek b'Shabbat unless it's lit actually now. Once it goes out, you're allowed to move it. But then he said, aval kosu karav hashashit. That I agree. Lo yizizem mimkomam. You're not allowed to move them from their place. So the Gemara says, Maishnahani. So why are these different? We said that Rabbi Shimon holds that once it goes out, you're allowed to move it. It's only asur to be moved when it is lit. Right? Oh, she went back. Ah, that'll be very good. Oh. Thank you. So, when it's lit, what do we say? But once it goes out, according to Rabbi Shimon, you're allowed to move it. Now, that means that Rabbi Shimon doesn't hold of migud itkatzai, l'ben hashmashot, itkatzai l'kul yoma. But when it comes to kos, ke'ara and hashashit, Rabbi Shimon says, no, those you can't move from the place. Even after they went out, don't move them. Why? So the Gemara says, Mashnahani, why are these different than a regular earthenware clay candelabra? Amar ula seifa atan le Rabbi Yehuda. You know what? This last phrase, aval kosu karav shashit, is not going according to Rabbi Shimon. It's going according to Rabbi Yehuda. So he says that not only is a candelabra asur, but even these are asur. Because they don't really get so ugly when they get lit. Still, they're still going to be asur. Why are they going to be asur? This is the way the Achronim say. According to Rabbi Yehuda, since you lit them at the onset of Shabbat, so even though they're not so ugly, because they're made out of glass, for example, or a plate, so the fact that it has some oil on it, I could still use it to put things in there. It's not like it becomes saturated with oil and like it becomes grimy and all that. So I can just wipe it down and use it for things. So, but still Rabbi Yehuda is saying, Aval kosu karav hashashit, don't move them because of a different muktzeh. Not muktzeh machmat mius, because these things they're not so mius. But machmat isur. Muktzeh machmat isur. What does that mean? Since it was asur when you lit them at the onset of Shabbat, so now they remain muktzeh throughout Shabbat because of Rabbi Yehuda's opinion that once something became muktzeh at the beginning of Shabbat, it remains muktzeh throughout. So the Gemara says, Matkif la mazutra ihachi mai aval. If it was really a new opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, why would it say aval? Aval means it's the same person speaking. Rabbi Shimon that said, Chutz min haner hadolek b'Shabbat, kafta mutar tatla, aval, but, means it's still Rabbi Shimon speaking. So it's hard to interpret that phrase to be Rabbi Yehuda. Elo amra mazutra le'olam Rabbi Shimon. It's Rabbi Shimon. So then we're back to the question, so why are these worse than a clay candelabra? V'chi kashari Rabbi Shimon b'nei zuta, dedaita ilaveh. Aval hani dinefishi lo. When did Rabbi Shimon say you're allowed to move a ner after it was extinguished by a small ner? Because when Shabbat entered, I have in mind, I know that this is going to go out very soon. In 2-3 hours, it will be out. Then I'll be able to enjoy it. I'll be able to use it as something to hold my items in it. I'll be able to use the oil. And I have that in mind. And that's why, after it goes out, Rabbi Shimon allows one to use it. Aval hani dinefishi lo. But these items, which are so large, and a person expects them to actually stay lit throughout the entire Shabbat, Rabbi Shimon is not matir. He doesn't allow it. Why not? Because he already set them aside in his mind. They became muktzeh in his mind because he doesn't even that he's going to be able to use them Shabbat. So they were set aside in his mind, and therefore they become muktzeh machmat isur. Normal items, if they're asur to onset of Shabbat, once they turn not asur, so that's what I was waiting for, this moment. But since these items, I didn't have any hope for them. I got lucky. 4 hours before the end of Shabbat, it's out. I wasn't expecting that. Therefore, that's also muktzeh, even according to Rabbi Shimon. Okay? Fine. So the Gemara says, "V'atanya motar Hashem shemenevesh shebekara asur Rabbi Shimon matir." Isn't there a braita that says in a plate? We just said a plate is a large thing that people don't expect, and that's why it's going to be asur for the whole Shabbat. But we have a braita that says that Rabbi Shimon is matir. He argues with the Tanakam of that braita, and he says that in a plate it's going to be mutar. Why doesn't Rabbi Shimon say over here that in the ka'ara, and the way Mazuta explains it, is that it's very large and he's not expecting it for it to ever become to be extinguished. Therefore, it's going to be us through the whole Shabbat. So the Gemara answers, "Hatam ka'ara dumya dener, hacha ka'ara dumya dekos." There, the ka'ara is dumya dener. Hacha ka'ara dumya dekos. There, the ka'ara is a little ka'ara on that braita. It's like a ner. And therefore, we're talking about that it's just basically exactly like a ner. It's small. And he was expecting it to go out. So when it goes out, even though it was asur at the beginning of Shabbat, because it was lit, it's not asur for the rest of Shabbat. But this ka'ara, when it says over here in our braita of aval kos uke'ara ve'ashashit, he's speaking about a large plate which has a lot of oil, and he wasn't expecting it to go out, and therefore it retains its muktzah status throughout Shabbat, even after it goes out. Okay. Amar Rabbi Zera. Pamot. What's a pamot? It's a metal candelabra. Shidliku bo b'Shabbat. That you lit it on Shabbat. The divrei hamatir, according to the one who is matir to move it. Who is that? Rabbi Meir, right? And Rabbi Shimon as well. But we want to speak about Rabbi Meir. If you remember, Rabbi Meir in the second line of the Gemara said, "Kol hanirot mitatlin chutz min haner sheidliku bo." As long as it wasn't lit at the onset of Shabbat, because he agrees with the concept of migud itkatzai l'kuli yoyma. But as long as it wasn't lit at the onset of Shabbat, even though it was once lit before, and now it's full of oil, he doesn't agree with the concept of muktzeh machmat mius, and you're allowed to move it. So the Gemara says a very interesting thing. The pamot, the candelabra, that's made out of metal, according to Rabbi Meir, asur. Okay, it's going to be asur to be moved. But according to Uladivrei HaOser, but according to the one that said asur, which on the clay candelabra, on the cheres one, which is Rabbi Yehuda, mutar. Okay. Now, what is the story with this candelabra? This candelabra does not really get too repugnant, too repulsive, because it's made out of metal. And therefore, the Gemara is saying like this: the problem of muktzah machmas mius does not exist by this candelabra. So why would there be an isser to move it on Shabbat? Because it's muktzah for a different reason. Machmat isur, because it was asur at the beginning of Shabbat. So the Gemara says that's only for Rabbi Meir. As Rabbi Meir said, Kol hanirot mitatlin chutz min haner sheidliku bo. right? He said, if you already lit it, it's muktzah machmat isur, right? But according to Rabbi Yehuda, that Rabbi Yehuda just said, ner chadash avalo yashan, David Rabbi Yehuda, he holds lo yashan because an old one is grimy, but a metal candelabra, which is not grimy, and it's not repulsive. So even if it was lit at the onset of Shabbat, once it goes out, it's okay. That means he doesn't hold to the concept of migadit katzai. Only Rabbi Meir holds the migadit katzai. So you have the Gemara. What the Gemara is trying to say is like you have one chumrah for Rabbi Meir, one kula, one chumrah for Rabbi Yehuda, one kula. Let's say them again. Rabbi Meir doesn't hold of muktzah machmat mius, but he holds of muktzah machmat isur, that it was asur at the beginning. Rabbi Yehuda is the opposite. Therefore, on a grimy cheres clay one, so according to both, it will be a problem if it was lit before. Okay, but if it wasn't lit before, even if it's an old one, according to Meir, it will be okay. He doesn't hold the muktzah machmas mius. But now the reverse holds true when you talk about a metal one. The Gemara says, according to Meir, it is a problem if it was lit. Because we don't forget about muktzah machmas mius. It's not mius at all, but it's muktzah machmas isur. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's not a problem because the only isur would be machmas isuro, and we don't care about that. So the Gemara says we don't care about that. According to Rabbi Yehuda, lemeimre de Rabbi Yehuda muktzah machmas mius itlei muktzah machmat isur letlei. He doesn't hold that something that's muktzah because it was once asur at the beginning of Shabbat. Rabbi Yehuda says, beferush, all the lamps of metal you may be moved, unless one, because they're not mius, unless it was lit at the beginning of Shabbat. So you see, he holds of that problem too. So the Gemara says, you're right. If anything was stated, it was as follows. Rabbi Zera said, Pamot, a metal candelabra, shidliku lav b'Shabbat. Divrei akol asur. If it was lit at the onset of Shabbat, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir agree of muktzah machmat isur, since it was asur at the beginning of Shabbat. Lo yidliku alav l'divrei akol mutar. But if you didn't light it, then everybody would say it's mutar, even if it was once lit and oil. Since it is not repulsive, since it's made out of metal, you can easily wipe down the oil, and it's not muktzah machmas isur. Okay? So now, just to wrap everything up, we have 4 shitot over here. 4 different opinions. We have Rabbi Yehuda says muktzah machmas isur is a problem, and machmat mius. Rabbi Meir only holds a muktzah machmat isur, not machmat mius. Then you have Rabbi Shimon, who doesn't hold of any of those two. If it was asur at the beginning of Shabbat, that doesn't bother him. If it's machmat mius, he doesn't have that problem. Okay? And his son, Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon, but he has one little problem. While it's lit, you can't move it. Okay? Because you may turn it right. Okay? And even the oil that drips out of it can't be moved while it's lit because it's huktzah lemitzvato, because it was designated for mitzvah. And Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon says that, I don't know, he, in one way he's less, doesn't go for huktzah lemitzvato, that it was something that was designated for the mitzvah. And therefore, if I know that by taking the oil out of a lit candelabra, it will not affect its light, it won't extinguish it, and the only issue would be huktzah mitzvato, we could disregard that, and you could take the oil out. So once it's going out already, and therefore it doesn't really need its oil, its oil is lo ma'alev lo morid, will make a significant difference. According to him, you could remove the oil. Okay. Those are the 4 shitot over here. Omer Rav Yehuda Omer Rav. Let's see where Rav's new case can be maybe explained from our Mishnah. A bed. In those days, they had beds that were used. Sometimes he designated a bed for his money. This is where he puts his money. This is where he counts his money. So you're not allowed to move it on Shabbat. Okay, so the Gemara says, why not? Because even though I never ever used it for something that is muktzah, I just told my family, see, this is the bed, we're going to put the money on it, but I never put any money on it. Once I designate it for a muktzah purpose, so now it's muktzah for my mind, and now it's asur. That's what Rav teaches us. So the Gemara says, Meitvei. They asked a very strong question. Who asked this question? Meitvei Rav Nachman Yitzchak from our Mishnah, Mitalten ner chadash avalo yashan. The Rabbi Yehuda doesn't say avalo hamiyuchad. He says if it was actually grimy and used, then you can't use it. What about if I said, look, this candelabra is going to now be used for, not for putting things inside it, we're going to actually start using it now for lighting. That would be like a bed that I designated for usage of money, and it should become asur according to Rav. But yet the Mishnah doesn't say that. The Mishnah you take the strongest, most machmir opinion in muktzah, which is Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yehuda says avalo yashan, if it was once used already, which would indicate that the bed will only become muktzah once it was used for money, not if you designate it to be used for money. That's the Gemara's kasha. And the Gemara asks it as a kavachomer. Uman ner de lahochi avida, ki lo hidlik b'shari l'taltulo. A ner is made. Its primary function is to use it for a ner, for something that's muktzah. Yet, if you haven't yet used it, it's called chadash. Even if I designate it, if I didn't use it, it's not yashan, and it's okay. Mita de lav lahochi avida lekolshkein. A bed which is not made for money, isn't it all the more so not going to be asur just through a designation? And the only way it will become asur is if I actually use it for this purpose, for this muktzah purpose. So the Gemara says, Ela I itmar hochi itmar. Says the Gemara, rather, if anything was stated, the following was stated. Omar Rabbi Yehuda Omar Rav, Mito, sheyichado le'maot, heniach alea maot, asur l'taltilam. A mita that was designated for money. If you placed money upon it before Shabbat, okay, even before Shabbat, asur l'taltilam, lo heniach alea maot, mutar l'taltilam. If you didn't place any money on it, it's okay to move it. Right? What? Even if he designated it. Now, what about if you didn't even designate it? Lo yichad ala ma'ot. Let's say I never wanted to use this bed for money. Then, yesh ala ma'ot asur l'tatala. It's still going to be asur to move it if there is money on it, because it becomes a basis, a base for it. Ein aleh ma'ot, if there's no money on it, mutar l'tatala, you're allowed to move it, as long as it didn't have money on it during Ben Hashmashot. Then once it becomes, according to Rav, like Rabbi Yehuda, muktzeh at the beginning of Shabbat, it'll become muktzeh for the whole Shabbat. Okay? So, So when is there going to be a difference between if there's money on it or if there's no money on it? Only if there was no money on it at the beginning of Shabbat. So it never became muktzah because of the beginning of Shabbat. So now it's the middle of Shabbat. This is the first time money makes it there by a baby, a guy, whatever it is, and the owner really wanted that to happen, because otherwise items can't become a basis. If you're not pleased by it, you own the bed. Oh, very good, perfect. The little kid just put the money there. You don't want the money hanging around the house. Kid came, put it on the bed. Oh, perfect. Worked out. Baruch Hashem. So now it becomes a basis. If there's no money on it, even if I was miyached it for money, since I never put the money on, it's not going to be muktzah. Okay. So now, what did Rav say? Rav said that if there was money on it, bein hashmashot, then it becomes muktzah for the whole Shabbat, since it was muktzah at the onset of Shabbat. So the Gemara challenges that with this Mishnah in masechet Kelim in Taharot. Omar Ula, Mativ Rabbi Elazar. Okay, now we have over here in the case in the Mishnah in Kelim something called a shida. A shida, according to Rashi at least, is this large wagon made out of wood. And it has walls, and people, men, ladies, enter there, and they move people around. It's made to transport people. It has something called the muchani. The muchani are the wheels. Now these wheels had some sort of compartment on top of them. They were very large, and they were like a separate entity than the actual wagon, and they had things on top that people would sometimes place things inside the top of the wheel. Okay? So, the halacha is like this. In the halachas of Tumah and Tara, it is a separate entity than the wagon itself. If the wagon becomes Tameh, it doesn't become Tameh. If it becomes Tameh, the wagon doesn't become Tameh. They have two, whatever happens to one doesn't necessarily happen to the other, since it is large enough to be considered its own keli. Okay. I hope it stops you. So the Gemara says, Muchni Shalah. So its wheel. Bizman shehi nishmetet. When you're able to remove it, that's the only time that it's considered its own keli. Ein chibela. It is not considered attached to the wagon, and it will not necessarily become tamei if the wagon's tamei, or vice versa. Has no attachment. They're two separate things. Now, there's another halacha. The halacha is that a kli eitz, something that's made out of wood, which is this wagon is made out of wood, is only mekabel tumah if you're able to carry it in all situations, which means empty or full. So if this would be made out of wood, this cup, can you carry it when it's full, or is it too heavy? Of course you could. So therefore, this will become tamei at all times. But if the item is so large that it can hold 40 sa of liquid, a sa is 144 eggs. So do the math, it's a lot. 144 eggs times 40 is 1440 times 4 is 1600. It's about 5760, something like that, right? I think that's the number always. 5760 eggs of liquid. If it's able to hold it, then now you can't move it. You can't transport it when it's full. It's too heavy. So once it's too heavy, the halacha is it's not mekabel tumah at all, even when it's empty. Now, let's say I have a big container of wood. What do I measure? From where do I measure? I can use the area of the walls. Let's say the walls are this thick. The areas of the walls are also part of the ear space, of the volume of the 40 saw. So let's say I had 39.9 saw, but then the walls add some thickness, and together, so that's also means that it's too, it's not roy l'taltaloi, it's not able to be moved, and therefore it's not mekabel tumah. So the question is over here, So therefore it says ein nimdedet iman. The ein nimdedet iman means it's not measured with it. You cannot use the wheels, the muchni, since it's something that comes apart and it's a large item. It's a separate entity, and we don't include it in the measurements of, let's say, this is the wagon. It starts from up here, but down here are the wheels. We don't could say, oh well, let's consider this part of it. Everything that fits between the two wheels are also part of the 40 sa measurement. No, it's a separate entity. Okay? Next halacha, ve'em atzelet ima be'olamet. It doesn't save items be'olamet. What does that mean? We know that if you would be driving over a met with this wagon, so now since the wagon is too heavy to be mekabel tumah, because it's made out of kliates, so let's say they go right over a mate. So now the people inside get saved. Why do they get saved? Because there's a separation, the size of a tefach, between them and the mate. What's the separation? The bottom of the wagon. The bottom of the wagon is part of the agala. It's a kli'etz. It's not mekabel tumah because it's too heavy, because it can't be transported, because it can hold 40 sa'ah. So since this item doesn't become tamei, so now they're sitting inside something over. They are being ma'ahil. They are being an oil over the mate, but there's an interpose between them and the mate, and therefore they don't become tamei. Okay? Now, what about items that are sticking out on top of the wheels? Okay? So now they will become tamei. Ve'ein matzelet ima be'olamet. Why? Because the wheels are not going to be able to be an interpose between the tumah and the kalim. Because the wheels are mekabel tumah. Because they're not part of this huge, massive thing that holds 40 sa. The wheels don't hold 40 sa. And therefore, the wheels won't be an interpose of something that is not mekabel tumah between the mate and the kalim that are placed on the top of the wheels. So therefore, they will be mekabel tumah. Okay? Ve'ein gorerin ata b'Shabbat bizman sheyesh alei ma'ot. You're not allowed to pull the wagon on Shabbat when there is money on top of the wheels. Why? Because now the wheels become a basis, a base for muktzeh. And therefore you're not allowed to pull the wagon, because once you pull the wagon, you're pulling the wheels. Okay? And now that you pull the wheels, so you're basically pulling an item that's muktzeh. And when does it say it? It says, Bizman sheyesh aleh ma'ot. When there is money upon it, right now. Okay? So the Gemara asks, Ha'in aleh ma'ot shaya. Avagav da'avel ben hashmoshes. It sounds like from this Mishnah that what? That even if there was, it has to be money on it now. Not, it should have said a bigger thing. It should have said if there was money on it at the beginning of Shabbat, regardless if there's money on it now. So the Gemara says, you see here clearly that what? The Mishnah doesn't hold of this concept of migudit katzoy leben hashmasus itz katzoy lekuli yoyma. So how did Rav say halacha that if there was money on the bed at the beginning of Shabbat, that's enough to make problems for the whole Shabbat? We see in this Mishnah that there has to be money on it during the Shabbat. So the Gemara answers, Hahir Rabbi Shimon hi telet muktzeh. That's according to Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon, he doesn't hold of muktzeh. And therefore, even the small amount of muktzah that he holds, he doesn't hold of this muktzah, of muktzah machmat isur, that once it was asur at the beginning of Shabbat, it's asur for the rest of Shabbat. V'Rav ke Rabbi Yehuda's file. But Rav that said, as long as there was money at the beginning of Shabbat is a problem, he holds like Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yehuda holds of the concept of migudit katzoy leben hashmasus itz katzoy lekuli yom. And tomorrow we'll see how we know that it's actually very reasonable to say that Rav follows Rabbi Yehuda's reasoning of migudit katzoy. The Gemara will bring proofs to that. Hazak Baruch.